All right, let's dive into something pretty fascinating. We're going back to 1960s Brazil. It was a time of dictatorship, people disappearing, and a woman named Eunice Piva. She refused to be silenced. Her story is told in this Oscar-nominated film, I'm Still Here, and it's more than just a drama. It's really become a touchstone in Brazilian culture. We've got some pieces from a Washington Post article here, and they really break down the film's plot, but they also go deeper into who the real Eunice Piva was and how her fight for justice still means something in Brazil today.
It's incredible how the film takes Eunice's story and weaves it with the story of Brazil itself. It kind of forces anyone watching to confront this dark period in the nation's past.
And to make it even more interesting, Fernanda Torres, the actress who plays Eunice, she's actually a daughter of that era. Her mother, Fernanda Montenegro, who is also an Oscar-nominated actress, plays the older Eunice in the film. So you have this powerful family connection woven right into the story.
It's more than just a connection, though. It's personal, The article mentions Torres saying that Eunice reminded her of her own mother during the 1970s, especially their strength and resilience.
Yeah, it's really like art imitating life, isn't it?
The film opens with a scene of young people getting stopped by the police. Torres compares that to her own childhood. Just imagine growing up with that constant fear of being watched and silenced. It's chilling how she sees those parallels between what happened then and what we're worried about today.
And that's what makes I'm Still Here more than a history lesson. It's like a mirror reflecting our own fears about censorship, how populism is growing, and even democracy eroding. It's all happening right there on the screen.
Okay, so let's talk about Eunice Piva herself. Who was she before her life changed because of the dictatorship?
The article describes her as a housewife, married to Rubens Piva, who was an activist politician. But then, during the dictatorship, Rubens vanished. He became one of the desaparecidos, which means the disappeared. And that's when Eunice's life really changed. Hold on, can we clarify something? For those who might not know, what exactly happened to these desaparecidos during the dictatorship?
Well, it's a very dark part of Brazil's history. The desaparecidos were people who were taken, often by the government, and then they were never seen again. Their families were left with nothing, no answers, just silence. And Eunice refused to accept that.
And that's where we see her transform, right? From housewife to activist. She demanded answers, wanted justice, and she was raising her children all alone at the same time.
Yeah.
She almost seems like the spirit of that film title, I'm Still Here.
Exactly. It's not just about her still being alive. It's about her refusal to disappear, to be silenced. She represents resilience, the strength of the human spirit in the face of such terrible loss.
And it's almost more powerful because she did it all with a quiet strength,
That's a really powerful contrast, isn't it? The film puts Eunice's quiet dignity against the brutality of the dictatorship, and that makes her fight stand out even more.
It really makes you think about how resistance can take so many forms, right? It's not always loud protests. Sometimes it's just that unwavering commitment to the truth, even when surrounded by silence and fear.
You're absolutely right, and that's what makes Eunice's story so fascinating. It reminds us that even during really dark times, people can make a difference. It might seem small at the time, but it can have a ripple effect that goes way beyond the immediate situation.
It's like that saying from Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Eunice Piva is like the perfect example of that.
I completely agree. And I'm Still Here is a powerful lesson in resilience, courage, and the constant fight for justice.
So we got this incredible woman, right? She goes through unimaginable things and comes out a symbol of strength. How did the film itself, I'm Still Here, become so important in Brazil?
Well, some people tried to boycott it, but it became incredibly popular, and it got people talking about the dictatorship and what it left behind. People really wanted to see this story, to confront a past that had been buried for so long.
That's amazing how a film can do that, get people talking about such an important topic. And Torres actually said the film is like a survival guide for dystopic times. That's quite a statement. What do you think she meant by that?
Well, she's drawing parallels between the dictatorship and the challenges we face today. All the fear and uncertainty, how democratic values are fading. These are things that connect with people across cultures and time.
So she's saying we can actually learn from Eunice's story to navigate these uncertain times. What can we learn from her experience?
Her resilience, her commitment to the truth and to justice, even when things were so bleak. Those are qualities we need now more than ever.
It's about having that inner strength to stand up for what we believe in, even when the world feels like it's falling apart.
Exactly, and it's understanding that even small acts of resistance, like speaking truth to power, can make a difference. We might not change everything overnight, but we can choose not to be silent. We can stand with those who are marginalized and fight for something better.
It's a reminder that we're not alone. There are so many people like Eunice who have fought for what they believe in. Their stories can inspire us to face our own challenges.
And speaking of inspiring stories, let's talk a little bit more about Fernanda Torres and preparing for this role. It was a deeply personal project, especially with her mother in the film.
Yeah, that must have been a unique experience. It's not every day you get to play a character based on your own mother, while your mom is playing the older version of that same character. It must have been a challenge.
It's definitely not typical, and the article talks about how working on the film helped Torres understand her mother better, both as a person and as an actress. It's almost like their personal connection grew stronger because of this creative project.
It's beautiful, actually, like art and life coming together, where their family history enriches their performances and makes the film even more real.
You've got it. It shows the power of stories to connect us to the past, to bridge those gaps between generations, and to help us understand the world in new ways.
So we've covered the history, Eunice Paiva's incredible life, and Fernanda Torres' special connection to the role. But I'm curious about how they actually show Eunice's transformation in the film. What did the filmmakers do to really show her strength and resilience?
One thing they did was use silence a lot. Instead of making Eunice loud and outwardly rebellious, they took a more subtle approach. They showed her quiet determination through what she did, what she said, and even the moments when she didn't say anything.
Interesting. It's like her silence is a form of resistance itself, a way of refusing to give in to the fear.
Right. It reminds us that strength doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes the quietest voices are the most powerful.
It makes you think about how different people handle trauma and adversity. Some might fight back loudly, others retreat. But Eunice chose to turn her grief into action, to seek justice.
And it wasn't just about justice for herself. She wanted to make sure her husband's memory and the memory of all the desaparecidos weren't forgotten. She understood that remembering is crucial for building a better future.
That's such an important message. It reminds us that even when things are incredibly difficult, there's always hope, there's always resistance, and the human spirit is incredibly strong.
I'm Still Here really embodies that idea. It's a film that stays with you, making you think, discuss, and hopefully act.
So we've talked about all of this, but what about the Oscar buzz surrounding the film and Fernanda Torres' thoughts on that?
Yes, the craziness of awards season. It's interesting to note that Fernanda Torres is handling all of this with a lot of perspective and maturity. For her, it's just another role, another performance. She's treating it with the same professionalism she brings to all her work.
It's really impressive how she's not getting swept up in the glamour. It's like she's using this as a platform to make Eunice's voice louder, to shine a light on this dark chapter in Brazil, and to inspire others to fight for justice.
Exactly. It's not about promoting the film itself. She's using this moment to talk about human rights, political freedom, and how important it is to remember the past.
It's inspiring to see someone using their fame to advocate for positive change.
It's a reminder that we all have a platform, whether it's large or small, and we can all use it to make a difference.
Absolutely. Every voice matters. And even small acts of courage contribute to building a more just world.
So as we dig deeper into the film, I'm curious to hear your initial thoughts on I'm Still Here. What struck you from the article, and what are you hoping we can explore further as we continue this deep dive?
One of the things that stood out to me is how the film blends Eunice Paiva's story with bigger historical and political themes. It's not just about her. It's about Brazil coming to terms with its past and working towards a better future.
That's a great point. And it shows how relevant the film is to the anxieties we have today about populism, threats to democracy, and how important it is to stand up for what you believe in.
Yes. I'm Still Here is a reminder that we all have a part to play in shaping a more just world. Even when things seem really dark, hope and resistance can win in the end.
You know, it's really something how I'm Still Here captures both Eunice's personal struggle and the huge political chaos happening in Brazil. It's like you see those two stories, the personal one and the political one, woven together to show this amazing resilience.
That's so true. And that's made even richer because Fernanda Torres, who plays Eunice, lived through that time. She grew up under the dictatorship.
Yeah.
So her family dealt with censorship and fear, just like we see in the film.
Yeah, it's almost like she's pouring her own history, her own anxieties into this role. The article I read mentioned how Torres' father was a playwright, and the regime actually censored his work. I mean, that fear of being silenced, having your voice taken away, that must have been a huge part of her childhood.
It makes you wonder, right? How did those experiences shape how she sees Eunice? And they both went up against a system that wanted to shut people up, make them vanish, literally and figuratively.
And it's not just Torres either. Her mother, Fernanda Montenegro, who plays the older Eunice, she was there too. It's like they're bringing this collective memory to the film, a shared understanding of what that time was like.
It adds so much weight to the film, don't you think? It's not just a story being told, it's almost like a story being relived, seen through their own experiences.
That personal angle is really important because it emphasizes the whole point of the film, I'm Still Here, isn't just about the past. It's about how those struggles are still relevant today, how that era still affects us.
Right. Torres even said the film is a survival guide for dystopic times. I mean, that's a big statement to make. Do you see those dystopian elements in the film and in what's happening around us now?
Oh, absolutely. Just look around. Populism is rising, misinformation is spreading, and there are more threats to free speech and democracy. It's like something out of a dystopian novel, but it's real and it's happening in so many places.
It is kind of unsettling how clear those parallels are. So how does the film act as a survival guide? What does it teach us about getting through these tough times?
I think we learned from Eunice's example. She wouldn't give up on the truth. She wouldn't be silenced. She found strength in the middle of all that despair. These are qualities we need now more than ever.
So it's about finding that inner strength, that resilience, to fight for what you believe in, even when everything seems chaotic.
That's it. And it's about knowing that even small acts of resistance, like speaking up against those in power, can have a ripple effect. We might not bring down entire systems, but we can choose to do something. We can refuse to go along with things that are wrong, stand with those who are being pushed aside, and try to make things better.
It's realizing that we always have a choice, even in the darkest times. We can let fear and hopelessness take over, or we can choose hope, choose to resist, choose to do something.
Exactly, and that choice, that's what makes us human. It's what lets us overcome all kinds of hardship and build a better future for ourselves and the people who come after us.
The film also brings up this idea of personal action versus changing the system itself. Eunice's fight for justice was very personal, driven by the loss of her husband. But does the film also explore the bigger systemic issues, the things that allowed a dictatorship to thrive and silence people?
Oh, yeah, it does. It doesn't try to hide the brutality of the regime, the arrests, the disappearances, the fear that was everywhere. It shows how those systems affect people's lives, how they tear families apart and leave scars that don't go away.
It reminds us that while what we do individually is important, it's often not enough to break down those oppressive systems. We need to work together, have organized movements, and change the system itself to really deal with the root causes of injustice.
You're right, and I think the film subtly encourages viewers to think about their own part in challenging those systems. It's not just about watching a historical movie, it's about seeing those parallels with today and asking, what can I do to stop this from happening again?
It's about realizing that the fight for justice, equality, and a world without oppression is something that never really ends. And we all need to be part of it, using our voices, our actions, and anything we can to make a difference.
And it's not always about big dramatic actions or revolutions. Sometimes it's those everyday acts of resistance, the little choices we make, the things we talk about, how we live our lives.
True. It's about being aware of the systems we're part of, the things we buy, the language we use, how we treat each other. Even things that seem small can either keep injustice going or help to challenge it.
And it's about finding those chances to work together with people who share our values to make a world that's fairer and more just.
Now, the article talks a lot about Eunice's strength and resilience, but it also mentions how the dictatorship affected her children. How does the film show what they went through, especially growing up without their father?
The film doesn't shy away from showing the trauma and uncertainty those children lived with. They lost their dad, their sense of safety, and their childhood was full of fear and secrets. It reminds us that political violence isn't just about one person, it spreads out, hurting families and whole communities.
It's hard to imagine what that must have been like for them, how those events changed their lives forever.
And it shows how important it is to heal those wounds across generations. We need to acknowledge the trauma that families pass down and find ways to help those who are still dealing with it.
You're right. It's not just about remembering what happened, but understanding how the past is still shaping the present and finding ways to heal and build a future that's more just and compassionate.
And when we talk about healing, one thing that's really moving in the film is how Eunice refuses to see herself as just a victim. She goes through so much pain, but she chooses to use that grief to fight for justice and truth.
It's like she wouldn't let the dictatorship destroy her. She held on to her dignity and strength, even when things were incredibly tough.
Absolutely. That refusal to be broken, to be silenced, it's so powerful. It reminds us that even in the worst situations, we can choose to hold on to our humanity, our values, and our hope for a better world.
It's like that quote from Nelson Mandela. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear.
That perfectly captures Eunice's spirit. She didn't let fear control her. She chose to act, to resist, to fight for what she believed in, even when it was dangerous.
And in doing so, she became an inspiration, a symbol of hope when things were really dark.
And her story, the way it's told in I'm Still Here, continues to inspire people today. It reminds us that even when the odds are stacked against you, one person's courage can make a difference. One voice can start a movement. One person's resilience can change things for the better.
Speaking of inspiring others, the article mentioned that some right-wing media in Brazil tried to boycott I'm Still Here. It seems like the film really hit a nerve, causing both praise and criticism. What do you think about that reaction?
It makes sense, really. A film that confronts such a sensitive and controversial part of Brazil's history is bound to get strong reactions. It challenges the stories people have believed for a long time, makes them face uncomfortable truths, and starts debates about the impact of the dictatorship, even today.
It shows how art can be a powerful tool for social change. It can get people talking, challenge their assumptions, and inspire them to act. And sometimes the most effective art is the art that makes people uncomfortable.
Exactly. I'm Still Here isn't a lighthearted movie. It asks hard questions, explores difficult themes, and leaves viewers wrestling with the weight of history and the responsibility to make the future better.
And the fact that people tried to boycott it just means that it needs to be seen, that its message is connecting with people, and it's starting important conversations about the past, the present, and the future.
I agree. It shows the power of storytelling to cross borders and cultures and connect with people on a really human level.
And, you know, Fernanda Torres got an Oscar nomination for her role as Eunice. It's amazing to think that both she and her mother have been nominated for Oscars. What does that tell us about their talent and the impact of this film?
It shows how incredibly talented they are and how strong their connection is. They were able to capture the heart of Eunice Piva, her strength, resilience, and quiet determination, and they brought it to life on screen in a way that really moves people.
It's really a remarkable achievement, and it highlights the importance of family, both in real life and in art.
And it reminds us that great storytelling can connect generations, helping us understand the past, see the present in a new light, and inspiring us to build a better future.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into I'm Still Here, what are some of the most important things you want our listeners to think about?
For me, the biggest takeaway is the power of resilience. Eunice Paiva's story teaches us that even when we face incredible loss and pain, we can still find strength, hold on to hope, and fight for what's right.
And it's not just about surviving hardship. It's about finding ways to grow from those experiences, learn, and use what we've been through to make the world a better place.
Eunice didn't let the dictatorship destroy her spirit. She used her grief to fuel her actions, her anger to advocate for change, and her despair to become even more determined. She became a symbol of hope for others, showing how strong the human spirit can be.
Her story proves that even when things seem hopeless, even when it feels like everything is lost, there's always a glimmer of light, a spark of hope that can lead us toward a better future.
And that spark often comes from within us. It's about finding our inner strength, that resilience, that belief that a better tomorrow is possible.
So as we go into the last part of our deep dive, let's keep those ideas in mind. Let's see how the film ends, how it makes us think about what Eunice Piva left behind, and the fight for justice, both in Brazil and everywhere else. We've been talking about so much, and I'm Still Here, the history, Eunice Piva's amazing story, and how Fernanda Torres brings her own experiences to the role. But we haven't talked about the ending yet. The Washington Post article describes the last scene as really powerful. You see the older Eunice, played by Fernanda Montenegro, standing in the doorway of her home. What makes that image so impactful, and what do you think it means?
I think the power comes from how open-ended it is. The camera is on Eunice's face, and you can't really tell what she's feeling. There's sadness for everything she's lost, but also that quiet strength she's always had, maybe even a little defiance, like she's refusing to be defeated. It says so much without any words.
It does feel like she's on the edge of something. Not just her house, but maybe a new chapter or a reckoning with all she's gone through. And it makes that title, I'm Still Here, even more powerful. It's not just surviving, It's about what her fight means and the questions it makes us ask.
Yeah. It has so many layers. On one level, it's Eunice saying, I'm still here, I made it, I'm not broken. But it also speaks to the legacy of her fight for justice, how the struggle for truth and accountability keeps going long after the dictatorship is over.
And it makes us, the viewers, think about how we can continue that fight, how we can help create a world where those terrible things don't happen again. It's almost like a call to action, urging us to face those hard truths from history and work towards a better future.
Absolutely. And that sense of responsibility of taking up the torch is even stronger because we've seen Eunice's story through the eyes of someone whose own family went through this dark period. The fact that it's Fernanda Torres telling this story adds so much emotion to that final image of Eunice in the doorway.
All right, we're not just seeing Eunice's story. We're seeing how those years affected generations of Brazilians. It makes you think, what does it mean to be still here in a world where oppression, violence, and silence still exist?
That's what's so brilliant about the ending. It doesn't try to tie things up neatly or give easy answers. It leaves you with this feeling that history is complex and that we still need to deal with its darker sides even today.
It's like a reminder that the fight for justice never really ends, that the past keeps affecting us. And it challenges us to look at our own role in building a better, more just world.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into I'm Still Here, what really stuck with you? What will you take away from all of this?
I think what resonated most with me was the power of quiet resistance. Eunice didn't lead huge protests or give big speeches. She fought for justice in her own way, with this unwavering commitment to truth, refusing to be silenced, and a strength that's both inspiring and humbling.
It's a good reminder that heroism doesn't always have to be loud and flashy. Sometimes the most powerful acts of courage are those quiet acts of defiance that slowly chip away at oppressive systems.
You know, it makes me think about the choices we make every day, how we can stand up for what we believe in, even when it's hard or unpopular. We might not face the same dangers Eunice did, but we can all find ways to speak up for those who can't, to challenge injustice and make the world a little bit better.
The film also emphasizes how important it is to remember. Eunice wasn't just fighting for her husband. She wanted to make sure people didn't forget him or the others who disappeared. She refused to let the dictatorship erase their stories, to silence their voices.
It really highlights how important it is to remember the past if we want to create a better future. By acknowledging those injustices, honoring the victims, and learning from what happened, we can try to prevent those same things from happening again.
So as you think about Eunice Piva's story and everything we've discussed, we'd like you to ask yourself, how can you show that same quiet strength, that dedication to truth, and that belief that a better world is possible?
How can you speak up for those who are being silenced? How can you use whatever platform you have, big or small, to fight injustice and help build a world that's more fair and equitable?
We believe that every single one of us can make a difference. And if we work together, we can create a wave of change that transforms the world.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into I'm Still Here. We hope this conversation inspired you to learn more about Eunice Paiva, to think about how her story is still relevant today, and to find your own ways to make a positive impact.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep fighting for what you believe in.